Okay, this is CoolRiceBunnies, and I'm here with this video all about amazing mold putty. But I'm just making this video because I recently bought it, and I kind of figured out some little tips and tricks that I wanted to share with my subscribers about how to make better molds. And I'm sorry, that's my sister's dog. He is trying just to get comfortable. Anyway, but I just have some tips and tricks that will help you to better estimate how much clay you need to make a mold, and also how to better get your clay out of a mold. So I'm just going to kind of get right into it. So I'm using mold putty. You can buy this, I don't know how many ounces, but it says it contains 2/3 of a pound of putty, and it claims that you can make all of these molds shown here. I picked mine up at Hobby Lobby for $19.99, but I had a 40% off coupon, so it was around $12. So the first tip that I want to share with you guys was basically the problem with Amazing Mold Putty is getting the right amount of putty to make your mold. With Amazing Mold Putty, you get two parts. You have a part A and a part B. And to activate the kind of hardening chemical reaction that makes it hard enough but still flexible enough to be a mold, you need to mix equal parts of the two putties together. Now, the problem with this is, since you're mixing two equal parts, you usually can't really get a good feel for how much putty you want to make to be able to place your object into it and create a successful mold. The biggest problem with this is not having enough mold, so that way when you press it down, it doesn't come through the bottom here. So as you can see, I made this mustache mold with this old ring I had, and it's kind of thin at the bottom. You can kind of see the mustache peeking through there. I'm not actually entirely sure if you can, but this can be fixed by one simple tip. So just take, what I do is I just take one of the parts of the putty. I don't take two, I just take one. And let's say I wanted to make a mold of this rose earring. So I would just take one part at a time and just kind of estimate, kind of play around with it. Did you see me miss that container? That was really athletic. Anyway, I take one part of the mold putty and just, kind of estimate, stick the earring in or whatever it is, kind of look at it, be like, okay, yeah, that's a pretty good amount of clay. It's pretty thick at the bottom. It's not going to break on me. And then, after you get that, just split it in half. And then once you split it in two halves, you can put the other half back, and you basically know, okay, I need this amount of putty from the other part. So that's just kind of, I guess, kind of like a no-brainer tip, but it really helps to just use one part of the putty to estimate how much mold putty you need. Because before, when I made my first mold, I didn't think about doing that, so I was kind of just guesstimating, putting it together, thinking, okay, I think this is enough. And then by the time I mixed the two parts together, I only had a minute until it started hardening. By the time I pressed in my object, I realized oh, I didn't mix enough clay, mold putty together. So that's just a great way for you to estimate how much you need, and then by doing that, you're not wasting any, because you know exactly okay, I need this much. I know you plan it out, and it's just a lot easier. So I hope that kind of makes sense to you guys, because it really does. It helped me a lot. So when you're putting clay into your mold, it's pretty easy. You just press it in, smooth out the top, and then by the time it comes to take it out, a lot of people I've seen in tutorials, when they use molds, they just simply pop it out. They just pop it out of the mold, and then there it is. That's pretty successful when it comes to things like cupcake molds. But when you have a mold like this flower one, and they get pretty intricate, sometimes you don't pick up all the details. This was the first piece of clay that I used with this mold, and as you can see, it's kind of flat. And compared to the actual earring, you can tell, I lost a lot of detail. It's pretty flat at the top. So then I thought about something. I thought, okay, it's a little hard getting the polymer clay out because it gets pretty distorted and whatnot, and I'm using regular Sculpey. I think if you use Primo or another clay that might be a little bit harder, you might be more successful, but I'm talking about if you're using pretty soft clay, like Sculpey's pretty soft in my opinion. I had this idea to just, after you put your clay in whatever mold it is, just pop it in the freezer for literally like not even a minute. But if you just put it in the freezer, by the time you take it out, the clay will be a lot harder and more dense. And I did that with this one. And it, as you can see, it picked up a lot, you know, more detail. It didn't flatten out as much. And like it's just an amazing difference. Like, I was a lot happier with this. And this will also work a lot better with kind of like thinner clay pieces. Like, for example, this mustache. You can tell that it's pretty thin, and like if I put the clay in here and I try to like peel it out, I can easily distort it. Like, I just dropped my mustache. You don't hear that every day, do you? Anyway, you could easily distort kind of like the fine texture on it and like these ends here. So putting it in the freezer for like 30 seconds really helped a lot, because you could honestly pop it out like an ice cube. It was kind of ridiculous. So I'm just giving you guys that tip when you want to remove your polymer clay from your molds. It helps a lot, trust me. Like, it's not going to ruin your polymer clay. Just make sure that if you have the clay in the freezer for a good while, just make sure it kind of thaws a little bit before you bake it, because I'm not really sure. Like, because I don't think it's going to affect it at all, because you're going to bake it in the oven anyway. But just, like, don't leave it in there overnight and then expect it to be okay in the oven, because I'm pretty sure you're going to have some trouble. I hope these tips helped you guys. Let me know down below if you guys have any other tips about how to better make your molds or take your clay out of them. And by the way, like, if the freezer thing doesn't work for you, like, for some reason you don't want to do that, or if, like, whatever it is you're making is super, super thin and detailed and fragile, you can always just bake the clay within the mold. Because if you read through the little pamphlet they give you, I believe it says, your mold made with amazing mold putty will withstand an operating temperature of 395. Since most polymer clays only bake at 275, you can totally just bake this in the oven and that'll be fine too. I haven't tried that yet, but I know a lot of people do that. So I hope this helped again. I'll talk to you guys soon, but now I'm just going to show you the demonstration of the freezer technique. Okay, so I just took the molds out of the freezer, and they were in there for about a minute or so. You don't have to keep them in for that long, but just enough so that they get cold and firm up. So I'm just going to show you guys how easily these pop out of the molds. They kind of just come out like ice cubes. Like, I didn't have to use my fingers at all. And they just come out looking very clean and nice looking. And then here's the frozen, not frozen, but like the mustache one. This one's a little harder. So this is still pretty firm, but this too came out really well. So what you're looking at right here is the flour piece of clay that I took out with my fingers and without freezing it first. And it did pick up a lot of the details, and I thought it was very good, but the one that I put in the freezer is a lot cleaner. It's not as misshapen as you can see at the top of the flour. It just kind of looks a little distorted when I pulled it out. So you just see that this flour is a lot cleaner looking and just a lot nicer, and also it doesn't, of course it doesn't have like the excess clay all around it, but it just looks a lot nicer. So this is the one that was in the freezer, and this is the one that wasn't. For the mustaches, they kind of came out the same, but it just got a little bit distorted when I was pulling it out and touching it. But like this one, it is exactly like the mold, and it's not very distorted at all. So you know, putting them in the freezer is not necessary. If your clay pieces don't come out right with your molds, it might be because of a couple of other things, like you might be using too much clay, not enough clay. Your clay might be way too warm because of kneading it so much, but putting them in the freezer definitely helps when you want to pop them out real quick, and it just helps to pick up a lot of that, a lot of those details that you want to see. And I hope this video was pretty helpful for you guys. I know it was like a lot is kind of a different video than like my usual charm updates and tutorials and stuff like that, but I just wanted to share these tips with you guys. If you guys have any more tips, leave them down below. Let me know if I helped you at all, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!